Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making Melodic Tech House synths and vocals inspired by HELLMATE and Santiago and Carlitos' version of Show Me Love. We're going to find out if we can do this in under 1 hour of in-studio time by using the 80-20 rule of synths and vocals in the tech house style. What you're listening to right now is the track that we'll be working on, and what you're looking at now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on in this tutorial. In particular, we're going to be focusing on this melodic group, which includes all of the synths and melodic instruments, as well as this group of vocals over here that make up this song. And all in all, it did take about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of in-studio time for me to create this loop. And all in all, it took me about 6 hours to develop this entire song, mixed, mastered, arranged, and ready to go. And if finishing songs faster is something that you would also like help with, I've created a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song every single week. And just visit the link in the description or the link that's on screen now to grab the ultimate song finishing toolkit for free. And with that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So in terms of starting with the synths here, what we have here is this kind of organ sound, and this is almost like really the main sound here. Everything else we'll be adding in is just kind of extra color. So in terms of the notes, what you'll see here is this chaos. And so essentially the way that I went about creating the pattern and notes in this one is if you watch the bass video before this, basically what I did was just dragged the song into a MIDI clip and then use the audio to MIDI functionality to kind of get the starting point. So I'll show you what I mean here. If I just grab this track here and drop it into a MIDI clip, you'll see you convert audio to MIDI. What you would do is select melody. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you something like this. It's going to be a messy, disgusting mess. But what you can do is then slowly adjust the notes and try to, by ear, figure out how you want to first get it to sound like the reference track and then start making modifications so that it's a bit more unique. This one I think still sounds quite a lot like the original. It's clearly very, very much like a homage, but kind of that's the main idea here. Particularly when it comes to this track, this is the same more or less MIDI that's playing as the bass. So once you have the bass down, what you can do is just drag this into a new MIDI clip and increase the octave so that it's just playing at a higher pitch. That's kind of the main thing that's going on here. In terms of the sound design, what we have here is I just found like a kind of organ sound in Splice and then just drop that into here. And so this is just resampling this organ sound, this organ sample at different pitches. If you've been following the channel for a little bit, you might know that I'm not too into traditional sound design or any of that kind of stuff. So I prefer to use little AI tricks or use a lot of sampling to get the sound at the end of the day. So in terms of that's really what the main thing that's happening here. Just found a cool sound on Splice. Made sure it was in the C note, as you can see here. That way it's going to actually track to the MIDI correctly. Other than that, the main thing I do want to mention here, and I have mentioned it in previous videos for this one, is that the reference track of the actual song is in this Ableton project file. And I've turned off the track here, and I set up so when I press the S button, I can flick between ours and theirs. And that way, the main thing is that this can really help you select the right sounds, make sure that the notes are correct, and one of the biggest things here is making sure that the volumes are correct. Sound selection and volumes really are going to be that 80-20 rule of making your songs sound really great. And by doing it against a reference track, you're doing it against the polished track that you want it to sound like. It's going to be that fast track to making sure that you're there. So that's really the main thing. So chose an organ sound, which I just kind of knew what that sound was. It's the classic M1 organ sound, and then dialed in the volumes. Other than that, we'll go into some of the sound design, but this is very, very like a cherry on top. So what I'm doing here is removing a bunch of the lows to kind of clean things up in the low end, making sure that the subs and the bass and the kick is the main thing driving up that low end. Then you were using some one-knob transient designer, so this is just a free transient designer plugin, and I've just mapped the attack and the sustain to single knobs here, just so it's easier and quicker. And all this stuff is basically developing my own channel strip so that everything is one knob away, and I can really quickly mix as I go, making very small standard moves, nothing too crazy. Other than that, we have also same thing, one knob sidechain. I'll open this up to show you what this is. Just using the shaper device to have that sidechain kind of volume shaper kind of thing. And it's running to the rate of an LFO, which is just a quarter note, which is usually what the kick is. So this way, and then all of this is being mapped to the gain of utility. So it's just ducking the volume of a track instead of having to map it to a kick, which I find just easier, so I can just dial in the sidechain with one knob. And then again, same thing, I've also built it into this same rack here. This is Ableton Saturator with the default setting. This way I can just with one knob dial in some saturation to fill out the sound of it. Other than that, we are running this through a bit of a portal device as well. This is just a really interesting kind of granular effect where I just found an interesting preset, to be completely honest with you. I didn't dial this in at all. And it's just adding a little bit of some extra weirdness and uniqueness to the sound. It's probably hard to hear, but and then in addition to that, I did make my own little rack of this so that the mix knob is automatically mapped. This mix knob right here, you see it's automatically moving. This way it's automatically mapped to this macro here, and I automatically add an LFO to it so I can dial in the depth and the rate of it, so that way this effect is being slowly manipulated and added in over time. That's why it's kind of subtle. It's sometimes at 100%, sometimes it's at like 30, 40 or 50% or whatever it is. And since I've been doing this so often, I automatically saved this device into its own rack. Other than that, running to it in a bit of a compressor just to kind of how would you say this, even out the sound a little bit so that it's not poking out as much. It's a lot more consistent. So just a 4:1 ratio, 4:20 ratio, pretty quick attack, and the release is set to auto. So it's just trying to even out the sound a little bit, make it more even, nothing too crazy, but a small little trick there. Now moving on, what we have is this. And so what this is just a cut up vocal bit from, I was asked to do a remix of my friend Zach Adams and Joshua Mitchell. They have a track called The Circle. And so I wanted to add this little vocal bit. If we listen to the reference, I think if we listen to, what is it? Which part is it? I feel like it is in here. Like this, the breakdown. Do you hear that like repeating vocal bit? That was kind of the part here that I was trying to recreate. So we jump back to this. I just found like a part in the vocal that I could just cut up, and you can see it's cut up not even in like perfect amounts. It's almost like doing kind of a weird polyrhythm kind of sound, which I thought was kind of cool. And that was just the main trick of getting that kind of repeating vocal idea. So if we have a look at the processing here, main thing is just moving a bunch of the lows and shelving out some of the highs, and even a bit of a low pass filter as well to get rid of some of the ultra highs. Then again, the standard stuff, we're removing some of the sustain, tighten up the sound a little bit, some side chain to make room for the sub and the kick and all that, and kind of add that groovy pumping vibe, and then some saturation here to make sure that it is filling up the sound a little bit more. Main thing though, again, is volumes and sound selection. And then next up we have these stabs. And this is where this track for me starts to take a turn into something that's a little bit more unique. So if we just have a look in here, basically I just found some cool little synth loop. And you can see here if I drag this out, this is what it used to be, starting on the 1. And what I did was just cut it up and I made it so it's starting at different points. So it's ends up kind of having this cool like minimal house kind of like filtery, cool vibe that I really, really, really like. And it's kind of just like cool little stab sound. This is obviously, if I go back to the reference track, nowhere near, this is nothing in that at all. So this is kind of what I mean, where starting off with a reference track can really get your sound professional, but then you can start taking it into new directions and make the track your own. And so that's what we did here, or I did here. So just found some cool stab, loop, and splice, cut it up in a way that I liked it. You can see here there's different colors. The different colors are like slight different variations of how I cut it up. So it's kind of changing over time. In terms of any sound design, I do have this crystallizer that we're running into. This is a granular effect that I love adding to like everything, basically. If I bring up the volume, that's what this sound is. And I'm obsessed with these kind of granular sounds. It's kind of weird, and it's something that I like to do in a lot of my sounds. Basically, just found a good preset, and then I dialed in the mix a ton. You just want to bring it in quite a bit, bring it down, and then you can see there's some automation bringing it in so that crystal sound comes in throughout the track at different points. Other than that, running it into this A1 trigger gate, which is free. Definitely recommend checking this out. Dialing in the attack a bit and the mix back a little bit so it's less of that kind of tremolo stutter house kind of effect. Just dialing in a little bit, and it's really good for getting that stutter house sound really quickly. Other than that, standard mix as you go kind of things, removing a bunch of the lows, a little bit of sidechain, a little bit of saturation. And this one, I don't think I mentioned, this is a free wider plugin. And basically, again, I like to map everything to these macros so that everything's just one knob away. And so that way I'm dialing in a bit, bringing it to the left and right, adding some stereo, making some room in the middle for any other of the elements. Next up, we have the stab echo. I think we'll have to go over here to kind of hear it, but let me turn it on and solo it. It's just weird little noises. Kind of hear like that little crystally noise is triggering like the crystallizer. Really subtle stuff. That's just like a weird little texture. I wouldn't consider that a mean amount of anything. We do have this low pad. So what we have is just these notes being played. And if we listen to it, it's slowly, we can see the filters being slowly built up here. It's almost more of like a transition effect, I would almost say. You can hear it really good right now. Bring up the volume. So it's almost more like a little effect or something like that. That comes in during some of the breaks, the smaller break here and the larger break. Just adding something interesting in the breaks to add something more interesting going on there. In terms of that low pad, what do we have here? This UVI workstation, speaking preset, Noctua. Just found something cool. I like the pad sounds in this quite a bit. In terms of the processing on this low pad, I think we'll skip it because there is actually a main pad that I added here. This, which I think is actually adding a little bit more to the sound. I think is worth looking into more. So what's going on here is we have a look at the MIDI. It does change a little bit throughout the track, but it's mostly just playing these notes here, whatever this is. It might be a power chord, I'm not 100% sure. Not amazing with music theory. I do apologize for that. But again, I think it's maybe the same. Okay, it's like a slightly different preset. Just found a cool preset. Removed a bunch of the lows, shoved out some of the highs. Got some of that one of sidechain, a little bit of saturation. Again, we have that portal sound in. It comes, I think, a little bit more of an effect during the arrangement or the arrangement part of the big breakdown. And some width pushing it left and right. And then lastly, we have this wah sound. If you listen to it, it's almost like Britney Spears Toxic or something like that. So very subtle, very subtly mixed in. Just trying to add something a little bit more interesting to the sound. Just drop that in there. What's going on here is removing a bunch of the lows and then also removing a bunch of the highs and automating it so it's slowly coming into the track more and more throughout the track. So just adding movement and some interest throughout the track to keep things sounding dynamic and interesting. Other than that, just a bit of one knob sidechain and a little bit of saturation. And then lastly, I will show you a bit of the vocal. So what we have here is, let's bring it over here. So this is the remix that I was asked to work on. And so this is like the kind of the chorus. I made it at the beginning. So it's just coming in a little bit as like a tease kind of thing. And nothing too crazy in terms of the processing here, but I'll just kind of show you some of the more little arrangement tricks. Again, during this breakdown, the first break, I just pitched it down and have it slowly being filtered up or the volume being brought up. And then, what else do we got? And then at a certain point, this is what it sounds like fully in. And I guess a quick look at some of the processing, removing some of the lows, erosion to add some character, standard mix as you go style, sidechain, a bit of width, or the width probably gonna be making it super mono so it's right down the middle. Nothing too crazy. That's kind of a look at the synths and the vocals for this one. Hello again, my friend. Hopefully you found that video useful. If you'd like to follow along yourself with the 5-step song finishing checklist, there will be a link in the description below where you can get access to that completely for free. And it's going to help you finish your songs a lot faster and better than ever before. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, but really the best thing I can do for you is hook you up with that free checklist, so make sure you check that one. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video, my friend. Have a good one.